All right, so there's nothing like a coding challenge to make you really question life. Okay, there's a lot more to make you question life than a coding challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my code. I'm actually not going to code it, and you tell me if you have feedback. Was this better or worse, right? Because sometimes it's good to watch people code, and sometimes it's just good to see what they did. So here's my program up. You can see I made a few changes to my heading. Yeah, that's nice. The other change I made here is instead of using the labels, the content to show the input fields, I just used, and I'll show you this, a placeholder. And I think that's a nice way to do it. I mean, there's definitely various reasons and rhymes to where you want to do that. Like, so I just think it looks better. You tell me. Okay, so that's the first thing I did. So let's just look at it operate. So if I do 0, we know that should throw an error. If I do 300 gallons, that will be fine. But let's say I did, was it price? I can't, was it price? It's been a minute since I actually did this one. Um, Sometimes I should just do it immediately after. So I have to go look at the logic. So price, yeah, if price is over 1,000. So that'll throw 2 errors. Okay. So I hit submit, right? And I don't like this, I gotta tell you, but for now it works, right? And I was kind of being snarky, I realized a little bit snarky here. I think this is an error, right? So the key was, how can you clear this, right? So if I do get a good submission, so I'll just show you. Let's say I went 300 miles. I used 5 gallons. I paid really good price for that. I hit submit. Oh, oh, look, I bound that. I didn't even realize. Did I bind that? Okay, I have to go look at that. Did I? Actually don't remember doing that. It's a number. Oh. That's a good question. I got to check that out. 4. All right, so the error message went away. I did get, oh yeah, I got the miles per gallon and I got the average MP, which is in this case is 1, and the cost. So let's do another one just so we can see it. Well, I realized the one thing I didn't do is I didn't put it below. I actually had that working. I must have when I brought it over, because I generally play on another branch, which we could talk about branches, okay? That would be actually a good conversation. So let's go 3, right? So now when I enter another one, then these update, which is great. Okay, so let me walk you through my code. One of the things I have is in my dev tools, you can actually click on this side and make this larger or smaller, and do the same over here. And often when you're walking through code or you're trying to troubleshoot code, it's nice to have, like at this point, I don't really need to see this. I really want to look over here. So, and I can make this code a little bigger. So it's nice that you can scale that as well. All right, so let's actually first walk through here. So if, right, if the error message, which is an array, is greater than 0, then we're going to output the error message, right? That's where we've used this. And by the way, I want to say where I got this, how to do like this concept of simple validation, was from Web Dev Simplified. And he actually ended up doing a join here, but I didn't. And I'll talk about that later. So we have an error message. Okay, so first we update it with whatever was in that array. Okay, if there's not an error, and this is how you can clear. So in this case, I set up an ERR. Let's go up and look at it. So I set up a new div. So if I go into my index, you can see the div, right? So I set up in here. Oh, no, I've already shown you that. We've already done that. Oh, so all I did was say error, because we'd already done this part, text content equal, in this case, an empty string, and that just clears it. And now I'll talk about the average output in a minute. So that's first how I cleared the message on a good submission. So if I have a good submission, then I clear it. And so now let's go take a look at how I handled getting the average. Okay. I ended up modifying, let's go ahead and walk through it. Let's walk through it in my code here. Right, so let's go down here so I can show you this. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to move the breakpoint to here. because this will come back to is how I cleared the average as well. Okay, so I'm calling, we've done this before, nothing really new here. This is where I have to go back over here and issue a new valid. Okay, so now I'm going to go walk through my code and show you what I updated about the track. Okay, so right now I'm going to step in. Okay, nothing new here. Default price, math round, nothing there. Now, what I ended up doing here was I updated my DOM function to also take in a div ID. Okay, it's an ID. It happens to be on a div. And so you'll see how I modified my update DOM is to say, take in the input, whatever the string was, but also take in that div, okay? Because I ended up setting up another div for the average. So in this case, I passed in the ID, I passed in the input, which we'd already done. And so now when I do a query selector, and actually I thought I'd change this to get element by ID. It doesn't really matter. And we should talk about the differences between query selector and get element by ID. But for this discussion, it's fine. Then I'm creating that P element. There's nothing different here. The only thing different here is I passed in the ID. And by passing in the ID, that allowed me to place content in different divs, where before I had only been able to update the output div. Okay. All right. So now I update this with the new output. I come back here. I push the MPG and the trip cost. And then I come back here and and that's the other thing is where do I call average? And there you might have thought you could call it here, but you would only want to call calculate average if you have good input. So in this case, here's all the things you do if you get good input. Average cost now, when we do this, this is no different, except for when we get to, and I could have jumped over this. I probably should have jumped over this. I really hope you're using DevTools. Okay, so I'm going to jump over this because we've already seen this is nothing new. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. Right here, when I'm updating the DOM, right, because I have my average miles per gallon, now I pass in that new div, okay, called output average. Now, again, we're going to learn other ways to do this, but for now, for this challenge, it was fine. Okay. It was a fine way of doing it. And I'm actually going to be interested to see what other ways you all come up with. Okay. Going back to the code. So that's the other thing I did here. And now I'm just going to let this run through. Now we updated, see how we are updating the average. Drop out. And now we don't have to watch this, but notice how this is also updating that same div. And now we're done. And now here's the last thing. And this is just, again, a simple way to do it. There's other ways to do it. But for now, it's fine. Is I grabbed the reference to the form and I just called reset. So what this did, because you always want to, from a user perspective, okay, as soon as they enter something, don't leave the old values there. Okay, that's just good user interface. I know you've experienced that on the other side of being somebody who filled out forms. So what I did here is no matter what happened, if there was an error, right, or if there was success, I still called form reset because anytime they entered the numbers, I wanted them to have a clean input on the next time around. Okay, I gotta go find out why that. Oh, huh, that worked. 4 and 5. I must have somehow limited. Anyway, I'll go play with that. I hope this was helpful. So again, update. As a matter of fact, here's where we could have a short conversation. You don't have to do this, but when you have this kind of coding challenge, and then I've come back around and walked through code. One of the challenges I could see here is that you have code you've modified and you're trying to integrate my code. So one of the things you can do, and this is just a quick, okay? So I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just giving you the introduction so that maybe we could have a further talk. Maybe you could give me feedback if you would want to do that. If you've ran into that issue, if I come down here, I could create a new branch, okay? So a new branch from, which would basically take that code and create a new branch. You could code on that branch and then come back to the code before it. Okay, so let me know, would you like a demo of branching at this point? But I feel like this video has gone long enough. All right, so I look forward to seeing your code. Oh, and by the way, if I hit submit there, that's when I was talking about clearing, right, those inputs. All right, so this is the second assignment for week 8. I'm going to do a introduction to objects, and that'll be it for week 8. Talk to you later. By the way, submit your history, your commit